All right, so my name is Jillian Salas. I am a current graduate student at Cal State Long Beach studying sport management, and I'm here with Mandy Bauer. This is the sports industry interview project. And Mandy, if you can just introduce yourself, where you work at, and maybe your position or your tasks that you do at your work, that would be great.
Absolutely. I'm Mandy Bauer. I am the Director of Hospitality at the Wells Fargo Center in Philadelphia, where the Flyers play, as well as the Sixers. I am actually coming up on my 5-year anniversary there, which is really exciting. I was hired as the guest experience manager, so I was working a lot with guests and our very large part-time staff when I first started. And then within the past 2 years or so, I've moved into the director of hospitality role. And in that role, I oversee a lot of various projects. And currently we are working on a large $250 million renovation where I've worked very closely with our architects, developing new spaces in the arena that I really think would be amazing for guests and keeping that in perspective for everyone, as well as hosting some VIP parties before concerts and things like that, which are other ways for us to earn revenue.
Okay, great. So I kind of want to backtrack a little bit, maybe back into your college career. Did you already know you wanted to work in like the facility or entertainment sports aspect of the industry?
So I went to East Carolina University and I have a degree in theater. I have a degree in Spanish and I have a business minor. So no, I did not. But I have always been a huge sports fan. I played sports my whole life. I remember vividly one day when I was at a football game with my dad and I thought to myself, man, this would be a really cool thing to do when I grow up. And, life kind of just happens. And it took me down a path that, I was actually a Spanish teacher for a while. And I quickly realized that just wasn't really for me. So as soon as I realized I wanted to change and wanted to get into sports, because that was really something I've always been passionate about, I made that happen within a little bit of, about a year or so. I was able to get into live events and make it happen, but it wasn't always a clear path and it was a challenging path, but it was so worth it in the end.
So I actually want to, I guess, if you can expound on what the challenges were, I guess, having, your work experience as a Spanish teacher, and maybe it seems completely unrelated, but was it really like, were you able to transfer those skills into, I guess, maybe when they're asking you like, well, why sports in an interview? What were that kind of, I guess, questions and answers that you faced?
So when I was in college and I was pursuing my business and my Spanish and my theater degree, my family often asked me, what do you plan on doing with this? And at the time I didn't really know, but I played it off like I was like, I know what I'm doing. It's fine. But now everything is really like worked into place, because while I'm at the Wells Fargo Center, I often work with the concerts, and I am there to help set up, we do CAD maps for parties and for concerts, and my stage and theater background helps me understand like what's going on there. I worked in music after I was a teacher. That's kind of how I got into sports, and we can talk about that too. But from teaching, I jumped into the music industry, and I went down to Mexico. I put on music festivals in Mexico. So obviously using my Spanish there, which was really fun. At times at the Wells Fargo Center, I've been asked to come down to help, communicate and translate for Spanish speaking guests, which is fun. And then obviously business. I'm always, I took lots of business classes, so that makes me feel comfortable as well. And yeah, I mean, I honestly, at the time, like I said, like I didn't really know, but everything worked out. I did have, I knew what I was good at, what I was interested in, and I pursued those things, and it seems to have worked out pretty well for me.
That's amazing. So when you entered the music industry, was it with like an agency or like a group, or was it through a facility again, or how did that begin?
So when I was teaching, I realized that I wanted to get into the music industry, and I started sending my resume out, but nobody wanted to talk to me because I had zero experience. And with sports and with music, you know, this is stuff that you should really get an internship with, and you need to have experience. But when I was teaching, I was at a charter school, so I was working like a lot of hours. I didn't really have time for that. So this is a crazy story. I won the grand prize to Hangout Music Festival through a Facebook contest where I got all access to this music festival, and I got, it was crazy. And so I printed off a bunch of resumes and I put them in my backpack, and I handed them out to people with radios and tennis shoes on. And they were like, what are you doing? You know, I'm at this music festival and I'm walking around like handing my resume out to this person with a radio, this person with a radio. They were like, okay. And nobody really wanted to talk to me. But then on the last day, I actually ended up meeting my old boss. And I convinced him during Stevie Wonder to hire me. And we always tell that story because it's like such a fun story. And, you know, I think that is one of the biggest pieces of advice that I can give to future people that want to go into sports is you know, this is a very cutthroat industry. It's people really want to get into sports. They will do, you know, it's very competitive, and you need to put yourself out there. You need to be confident in your abilities and your desire to work in the industry. And, you know, you need to go after it. You know, if you meet somebody, you know, don't be shy and ask them for a few minutes of their time and be polite and be respectful of their time. But what's the worst they can say? No. And then you're still in the same position that you were in before.
Right. So one thing that we're learning in my program is the concept of like a sales pitch, not just only selling what, you know, the product, but also selling yourself as an individual. How are you able to do that with I guess your former boss? Wait, is he your former now current boss?
He's just a mentor friend now.
Oh,
but
okay.
So he was the guy that ran the company, the music company that I worked for. And, you know, I was just, well, first I surprised him. I got his attention by having a resume on the beach at Hangout with glitter in it. I put glitter in the resume, and he was like, what is this? You know, which was unique. And then I just politely asked him, I was like, hey, you know, I have been searching for somebody because I really want a job in the music industry. And if I could just have 5 minutes of your time. And we sat down, and I just, you know, I told him that I'm a really hard worker. I really want to work in music. And you can see my resume right here. These are all my qualifications. I don't have any experience in music, but I'm a hard worker. I'm clearly determined, you know. And he was like, well, yeah, you're right. I mean, you know, and then by the end of the conversation, he was asking me when I could move to Philadelphia and start working for him. So it worked. And it was really cool. And, you know, at the Wells Fargo Center now, we often have colleges, students come in and have, you know, just talks with us. And I'm always asked to come tell that story because it, you know, it sounds easy, but it's not. And it's not easy to do. And it's not like anybody told me to do that. You know, I didn't know that was like the way to do it. I was just like, well, I mean, I guess I'm going to try it. And it's like, I just want to share that with people because it sounds so simple that maybe you wouldn't even think about it. But like, you know, if you can just get somebody's attention for a few minutes and prove to them and show them that you are a hard worker, you're determined, you really want this, you're going to work hard for them. And I think that at least it's worth a try.
I think some of us, when, you know, amongst my classmates and I, we talk about how scary it is to approach people. Sure. So I don't know, maybe it already seems you have an outgoing personality. So I'm sure that is like a great selling point already, but maybe for some of us who are more timid or who are more like hesitant or need to work on like our confidence a little bit, what other advice do you have about how to, I guess, maybe just even approach someone or work on, you know, your confidence?
I think, and that was like, you're right, like a very outwardly approach to doing it. The way I got into the sports industry from music, it was a little bit more laid back, if you will. So perhaps if you can, another thing in sports to remember is it is all about who you know, and relationship building is so, so important. So the way I got into sports was one of my colleagues from the music industry got a job at the Wells Fargo Center. So since I had a great relationship with her and she knew I was a good candidate, she introduced me to the HR manager there. And I quietly started to develop a relationship with him. I reached out through email and I introduced myself. There wasn't a position open at the time. So I was persistent. So, being persistent, I think, is a good way to possibly just continue to work on your confidence, work on those relationships. I asked, every 2-3 months, I just sent him an email and said, hey, just checking in. How's everything going? I'm still here. I'm still interested in, working for you guys. And month after month, there was nothing available. So eventually I just asked him if he wanted to meet for coffee. And he was like, okay. And I showed up, I had my little folder with my resume on nice paper, of course, I'm sure they teach you that. But I was genuinely interested. So I think, persistence, and being genuine and not trying to be like, I think I get a lot of messages from younger people that are right off the bat, hey, can you send my resume to so-and-so? And I'm like, I've never met you or talked to you. And, it's not genuine. I think being genuine is such an important step, especially if you're new. I think that can get you actually very far. And, caring about, the company, what's happening at the company, what the company stands for, I think that's really important.
Right. So we're definitely learning a lot about like building our network and doing, I guess being humble. But I think sometimes we face, network burnout. I don't know if that's a term or not, but
Sure.
You're reaching out to so-and-so and you're not getting a response back, or maybe you're kind of tired of telling your story. Have you ever experienced that in your career thus far?
I've been on the other end. I've actually experienced that. And I think one thing that I can definitely share with you guys that are trying to network. Okay, so think about who you're trying to get in touch with. Is it somebody in hockey? Is it somebody in basketball, in football? What time of year is it? Is it their preseason? Because during preseason, like I can barely answer my text messages. Right now is a really busy time for hockey because our preseason starts this month, and then in October our season starts. So think about that when you're trying to reach out to somebody. With hockey, with basketball, maybe the springtime is a good chance that you might be able to get somebody's attention. In the summertime, it's probably really difficult to get somebody that works for a baseball team. It's probably difficult to get their attention. So I think that is something that you guys can maybe think about. And, maybe LinkedIn isn't, I think it's a great tool. If you can find their email address, it might be better. If you know a connection that's, know somebody that knows somebody, I think that's also a good way. I know that people in sports, they do get a lot of requests and lots of emails and LinkedIn messages. So, it's about, standing out too.
Right. I've definitely experienced that.
Yeah. And I mean, it's tough. I mean, but I think if you just, I know it's easier said than done, right? But staying positive, and just keep trying. Like, I think you just kind of have to have that mindset of like, maybe a lot of these people aren't going to get back to me, but it just takes one person to open your email or your message and, like what you have to say. And just, and I think as many people that reach out to me and say, hey, can I have like 10, 15 minutes of your time? Like, I would be more than happy to be like, yeah, sure, absolutely. Like, cause I was in that position as well. And I would have loved for somebody to say yes to me. Like, it's not like I can't say that I'm gonna like get you a job, but like I can at least like, talk to you and see if there's any specific questions that I can help you with or something like that.
Right. You had mentioned earlier that you had moved from a location to Philadelphia. Were you living at home at that time before you moved to Philly?
So when I graduated school, I got a job as a teacher. I was doing Teacher America, which is like a big nonprofit. And I was placed in DC where my grandma, she was actually in Odenton, Maryland, which was like 45 minutes from DC. And the plan was to live there for a year and then get my own place. But like, I loved living with grandma. So I lived with grandma for 3 years and it was so fun. And it was something like memories that I will always cherish. So yeah, I lived at home with my grandma and it was awesome. And then I moved to Philly and I got a roommate. But grandma was the best roommate.
I'm still at home too, so I have no regrets. Where are you originally from?
I'm from Baltimore. I grew up in Towson, Maryland, which is like a suburb of Baltimore.
Okay, so my reason for asking is this because when you move to a new city, I'm not sure if you knew anyone in Philadelphia or in the surrounding area, and I know some of us who live here in Los Angeles are kind of hesitant, like why would we go anywhere else? What advice do you have moving to a new place? Or I guess well, obviously it's more beneficial now because you're working with a company you've been with years, but I guess what could you say to people who are hesitant in moving?
Well, I think that it's totally normal and natural to feel nervous. I've been in Philly for 8 years now, and I do really like the city. I actually just bought a house. So that is like a big girl move that I'm like super proud of. But I won't lie to you, it's definitely challenging. It's challenging to make friends when you're older, but I think just keeping an open mind and finding activities that you enjoy in the city, like I've played on softball teams, kickball teams, like there's definitely like adult sports. One of my neighbors is really cool. And, I think being younger in sports, like I definitely really connected with a lot of my coworkers when I first started at the Wells Fargo Center. A lot of them have moved on, but one of my best friends is someone that I met 5 years ago at the Wells Fargo Center. And I just, like her and I are super close. She just had a baby. I've been to visit them. Like she's one of my best friends. So, but I also warning with that, like in sports, you spend a lot of time with your colleagues. I do think it is important to not get too caught up in like being popular at work. I do see a lot of that, especially being a woman. There's a lot of emotions, per se, like, for example, like if you climb the ladder up quicker than someone else, there can tend to be like jealousy and hard feelings. So just remember, like, be careful. Like, you can have friends at work and, be yourself as much as possible at work, but you're also there to be professional and to represent the team and the values of the company. So, I think it's just like a fine line that you need to work on, going out to work with your happy hour, or going out to happy hour with your work friends, versus what you do on the weekends. So just something to remember, find those, maybe you have like 1 or 2 people at work that you like really can see yourself being friends with outside of work. And maybe you start a really true friendship, with that person. But I don't necessarily think it's like the most important thing to be in like the in crowd at work.
Right.
If you know what I mean, because I think that's, it's still like that. So, just be careful.
That's very interesting because I know when I was doing a different informational interview with like a board director from my campus, she said the same thing. You know, you still have to watch around because, especially even like with women, that they'll be catty or they'll be like angry that you're moving up instead of them. And it's just so interesting because it's already such a small pool that you're working from. And how do you, you're against all these uphill battles, and how, someone who's supposed to be an ally, how do you face that in itself when you're already facing everything else?
Yeah, it's super tough. I think, having a great relationship with your boss is important. Having a relationship with the people your boss interacts with is important, because then those people that, have weight, they see that you're a great employee, you're doing a great job, and you're doing your job. That's all that really matters. Like, you're, obviously you want to be respectful and you want to be kind and you want to do your job with your colleagues at the same level as you. But, at the end of the day, it's your boss and the people above him that are considering you for a promotion. So, and I think, like I said earlier, relationships at work are super important. There was this story so when I first got to the Wells Fargo Center, I worked really closely with our part-time staff. And I would always tell our full-time staff, like I would do trainings to we did reward programs for our part-time staff because, they are the ones that are guest facing. All the guests are the ones interacting with them. And they are so important to our whole customer service initiative because, they're the ones that are dealing with the guests. So when we would do full-time staff training for our rewards program and our recognition programs, there's a story with JFK when he went to NASA one day and he was in the basement of NASA going up to wherever, and there was a janitor there, and he stopped and he asked the janitor his name, and he had a full-on conversation with this guy. And this janitor that worked there, he was a good employee before, but he turned into the best employee and was shining ever since then because, knowing somebody's name, getting to know them on a personal level, investing just a little bit of time can really change a person's whole dynamic and whole demeanor at work. So, it doesn't matter what level the person is on. Treat everybody the same, be respectful, be kind, and genuinely care.
Right.
Yeah.
That definitely makes sense. So now I kind of want to talk about of course, COVID, working in a facility, and obviously live events were canceled. How was it like for you or you and your team going through this past year and a half, I suppose?
It's been tough. COVID has definitely been tough. We have had many challenges. We have our first big concert coming up in a few weeks, and it's been a challenge to get it going because, all the artists have different protocols and requests for things like that. So it's been tough, especially not being in the office with everyone. I'm only in the office 2 days a week. So, more challenges there. Lots of just extra communication with the guests of what the policies are. We're going to open doors earlier for this show coming up because we are going to be checking negative COVID tests, vaccination cards per the request of the artist. So that's the first time we're doing that. And we've got a full house at 18,000 people coming in. So okay.
It's going to be fun.
So that's going to be interesting. But one thing I told my boss, we had a meeting about expectations and progress or whatever. And I was like, well, my role is fairly new. So the plan was to progress as we go and develop the role as we go. And, COVID really put a big damper on that and a big halt to that. So I told my boss, I was like, well, I kind of feel like I'm, it made a sports reference, of course. And I said, I am the utility hitter on the team right now. So basically I'm doing a bunch of random projects, tying up loose ends. And although that it might not be, my passion to X, Y, and Z, do a bunch of like, little projects here, but I'm hoping, to show that I'm a team player. I understand that this stuff has to get done. And I know that they can count on me. So that's why they're asking me to do these things. So
I think that's a great quality of work ethic, and anyone could use that advice, especially during these times when,
right.
like, for example, I work at CBS, and when our bureau shut down in New York because it was the epicenter, they brought all of our content, like our entire 2-hour show, into the LA bureau and our DC bureaus, which are like half the staff.
Oh, wow.
So it's like, okay, well, I've never edited before. Go in the edit room and go help cut some video. Just like, okay. But I mean, I think it just goes to show, like, you have to be like flexible within the company. And, we're all working towards the same thing of producing a television show, or having, sports back, or having an event back. And I think maybe when we think that we get an entry-level job right out of, like, grad school or college, I think a lot of us feel that we're not, our voice isn't loud enough to do change, like to start change, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. Absolutely. It does. But from my perspective, it is. And you just have to figure out where you can put your voice. Maybe it's not in your direct role, but maybe you start talking to your boss about, hey, I had this idea, or I think this could be really good. And if you keep doing it enough, they're going to be like, oh, well, maybe that's a good idea. I got to go tell somebody about that. And if they're not a huge jerk, they'll let the person know that they told that it was your idea. So I think it's totally, you're right, and that's how I felt too. But you can make it heard if you have good ideas and you keep sharing them, because somebody's going to listen to you eventually. And if it's not your direct superior, maybe you're in a meeting and you keep, you have some good points, like you're really paying attention. You think about stuff outside of the meeting and you bring good ideas to the meeting. They're going to be like, Jillian's really smart. And I think that we should ask her to do this. And, it might take some time and it's going to take some courage, but, I think you can definitely do it.
Have you ever had an experience like that where you like pitched something and then they actually picked it up to, your organization?
Yeah, well, so when I first started, I think that the guest experience manager role was initially to like answer emails and phone calls of guest complaints. And I was like, I'll do this, but I'm not doing this forever, and I kind of made it my mission to, we didn't have a lot of things in place that I felt that we needed to have. So in terms of like staff recognition and reward programs for our part-time staff. And, so I took initiative. Like I was there on Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. Like I asked for a donut and coffee budget, and I was there handing donuts out. And so like I was visibly seen by upper management, and like, I was like doing a lot. And eventually, I got a senior manager promotion within like 2 years of being there. And then within 4 months of having the senior manager title, they approached me with the director of hospitality role. So I was like, okay, so like they see that like I'm really, committed to this.
Right.
It's going above and beyond and taking initiative of those extra tasks. Like I didn't have to walk around every game and like hand out candy to people, but I did because I wanted to. And I thought that was like, and even now, 5 years later, I see some of them and they're like, where's the candy? And I'm like, I don't have the candy budget anymore. I'm sorry. And they remember that stuff. And, I think the initiative is definitely what can set you apart, for right. Sure.
So now that you've reached the director role, what I guess maybe are some future goals that you want to maybe implement with your organization, or even just personal goals that you have with your career?
Yeah. So one thing I'm working on right now, which was put on hold because of COVID. So with my background in guest experience and facilitating like VIP experiences, I approached my boss and I want to create like a VIP backstage experience for our artists when they come to the Wells Fargo Center. So I'm working on creating like an artist lounge. Pardon me.
Yours.
So I'm working on right now creating an artist lounge for our, for promoters and our stagehands and anybody that works for the tour. The artists usually have their own like tour bus or something like that, but I'm trying to create just like a nice vibe and feel backstage, so that, when people come to the Wells Fargo Center and they leave, they'll remember like, wow, like I can't wait to go back there. That was really cool. So I, taking the hospitality part of my role and bringing it to fruition and bringing it to life, for our concerts.
Yeah, that sounds so fun.
Yeah,
so
thank you.
This is just a random question. Did you happen to have a knowledge of hockey already before you started working for the Flyers?
I did not. So from Baltimore, and we don't have a hockey team there. And I had no idea what I was, no idea really anything about hockey. I've definitely learned about hockey. I'm not really totally sure. I know what icing is, but like I can't explain it to you. I love it though. It's super fun to watch, like so much energy. I love, I'm a big football fan from Baltimore. And so I love like the, the hard hits and like the, I like the fights and like, somebody gets hurt, I'm like, whoa, it's fun. It's a really cool sport. And, the fans are awesome. They're very passionate Flyer fans. It's really cool. So I love hockey now, but I had no idea anything about it when I first joined the team.
Yeah, I asked that because I know like a lot of opportunities will probably come into a market that maybe you're not familiar with. So I think some of us are just, we need that little push. Like, I think there's like some MMA gyms out here or like some boxing events or even like water polo or volleyball that maybe like not a lot of us know or are familiar with those sports. So it shouldn't like hold us back, right?
Oh, and I know, I honestly, so this is my rule that I enacted for myself. Since I'm such a big football fan, I told myself that I will never work for the NFL. I don't think that is in my future because I'm such a fan that I don't want to get jaded in any way.
That makes sense.
And I love hockey, but it can be a lot. Like there's 70 games a year, it's a lot, and it's a lot of time spent on it, and it's great. I love it, but I think that I'm going to keep football separately because that's my thing, and that's the sport that I like to watch.
Right. That totally makes sense.
Yeah. So don't get intimidated. Wrap your head around it and see if it's for you, of course, but like I wouldn't let that hold you back because you can always learn. You can always learn about new things, and if you don't like it, then that's fine. But I think if an opportunity arises that interests you, like try it. You never know until you try it.
Right, exactly. I definitely agree. So it's been about 30 minutes and I don't want to take too much of your time, but did you want to add anything else that I might have missed or that you want to mention at all?
I think I hit all the points that I wanted to share, but I think you did a great job interviewing and it was a pleasure talking to you. And if you ever, connect with me on LinkedIn, if you ever have any questions or if I can help you in any way, I'd be happy to chat with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I appreciate that. And I definitely will find you later.
Absolutely. Yeah, do it. It was great talking to you and I wish you the best of luck. I'm sure you'll do amazing things.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Have a good day.
All right. Bye.
Bye.